Perfect. Okay, and back. There we go. Perfect. Oh, I need to delete that. Okay, and this one. Great. Broadcast. Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome back to An Art of the Mating Season 2. We're just going to let you fill up the room here. Let's have a look. We've already 66 participants all around the world joining us. This is great. We are live streaming also on YouTube. So if you have friends you want to flick the link to, you can just go to Jack Cantillon at my YouTube profile. You can send it out to your friends. But you are the lucky ones because you're in the room here with us and you're going to be the ones participating on polls and asking our panelists questions direct. So if you just hit the Q&A function, we are open to questions all night and we're really looking forward to having a great debate for our first episode of Season 2 of The Art of the Mating. And what a better panel to have put together than the one we have right here before us. I'm going to have to start because I'm so intimidated by the august books behind them. Paddy Diamond from the Irish National Stud. Paddy, thank you very much for joining us.
No, pleasure to be here.
Great, great. Mark Byrne from Coolmore. Thank you very much, Mark, for coming along.
Thanks for having us, Jack.
And our Englishman that happens to be an Irishman, Joe Callan from the English National Stud. It's great to have you too.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having us.
So, lads, tonight's debate, I want to let you know one thing very early on. And that is, I have a big, bright mute button. And if I hear any of your marketing spiel at any point, you're going to be muted. I want impartial and honest opinions on these horses. We have over, let's have a look. We've 119 people online at the moment. They want to hear your honest views on these horses. And we want a real debate on who we think will be the first champion sire of 2021. So we're having a look at Churchill right here in front of us, of course, a real contender for that crown. But first, and I might shoot this question over to you, Mark, you know, when you think of the required credentials for a champion first season sire, what do you think?
First and foremost is probably numbers. If you're looking at by winners, it's down to what they did at 2. So numbers is a big thing. And in recent years, and O'Callaghan seems to be another big thing. They seem to just have whatever base and mares or the type of stallion they stand. They seem to dominate it between either Tally or Yeomanstown.
Very humbly put, and already you're getting brownie points for not having to trumpet the Coolmore.
I'll store them. Don't worry, I'll store them.
But and so, would you echo that? Do you think numbers is the main criteria? What about talent? What kind of or distance? What are you looking at when you're looking for a profile of a champion first season sire?
Yeah, I agree with Mark. Numbers is obviously a huge part of it. You have to have the soldiers really to go to war with. Obviously, talent's obviously crucially important too. You do like to see one who won in the early part of the year. You know, obviously gets sharper distances a mile down. You do need that also. Pedigree is obviously a massive thing too. Make sure it's a precocious enough pedigree to get rolling. But you know, we can never forget about quality. As I said, talent and quality obviously comes part and parcel with it, and making the impact that stud in his first season. When it boils down to winners, obviously numbers is one of the most important parts, and that obviously boils down and ties in with breeders. You know, make sure the right breeders are using them and so on, and that to go to the right homes.
Yeah, absolutely. Breeders are kind of at the forefront of this. If you don't get the right, you know, you get all the mares you want, but if you don't get quality mares, you know, you really are going to struggle. And of course, Paddy, Decorated Knight, he's really a kind of a sleeper maybe for quality mares that people might not have realised in 2021.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a horse like Decorated Knight, I don't think anyone's expecting him to be leading first season sire. No one expects that. So I think it's going to be down to quality, and that's probably him hitting the black type winners column and getting enough winners on the board to put a nice tally together that looks good going forward for him. But he's one of those horses that when you go down his family, you know, it's such a good deep family with a lot of quality horses in it, that you've got a lot of 2-year-old speed through it. So you've got multiple Group 1 winners, but you've got a lot of champion 2-year-olds within it, which is really promising going forward into this year. And with the quality he's got to run for him, you're expecting those to see those in the middle to back end, very similar to his sire Galileo, that you're going to expect them at the middle to back end to really kick on and be exciting horses going forward for next year.
And Mark, I look back at the odds for last year, and Memas was probably the greatest bet of all time. He had all these foot soldiers. He was, he had that precociousness, and as you mentioned, he came from the right hotel in Tally-Ho. He was 7-2. Do you think there's horses with similar profiles this year that you're keen to get on board with?
Unfortunately, from that point of view, no. I had a good talk with Mr. Tom Nugent about this last year, and I just couldn't believe when he was 7-2. But I don't think there is an obvious a standout for that. But I think with Jack, though, we have to remember is that there's two different things with this. There's the actual sire of the most winners, and then there's always the moral winner as well, which is a very hard thing to describe as well, which we'll probably get into, I'd say, as we develop the chat. But it's not just about the individual, like the most individual winners in the year. There's horses there that can have very few numbers but come out with massive credit from the year.
And Joe, when you're reflecting on 2020 and those kind of moral winners, so we all know about Memas and the headlines he's created, but what kind of other stallions have we stood out for you in 2020?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's one of the most important parts of it. There is the moral winner. General Nube obviously was a massive standout this year. What he achieved was incredible, and Bellardo also. I think their horses, even though they didn't have the same amount of numbers as Memas was obviously a revelation, that they're sires that are going to obviously make a big impact on what they've achieved so far.
And then I suppose that big impact, Paddy, it translates into the sales ring. So you could even have 10 winners, but if they're impressive 10 winners, the market respects that, and you get rewarded.
Yeah, I mean, we're all always trying to find an angle, be it the stallion farms or the breeder. They're always trying to find an angle. So you go through it, and certain horses hit you in the face of excelling through times where maybe they shouldn't have done. Maybe they've been produced animals slightly more precocious than we're expected, so they're going expected to do better things. I think Nube is one of those prime examples, that a horse that people expected good things from, but maybe at the back end of his 2-year-old career going on to 3-year-old, so they were pleased by what he did with his earlier types, which is encouraging going forward. And that can work against a precocious horse if they don't have those winners early when they're expected, when that makes it a lot tougher for them to come back the following year. Expectation versus reality for these horses can be really tricky. So the higher the expectation, the more they have to achieve, whereas those horses that maybe aren't expected to go and excel really early may have an easier time to go under the radar before producing a nice winner and really exploding into the sales ring that year.
Yeah, and I think if we had this chat back in 2020, it's Nube didn't win at 2. I believe he was just second in a maiden, and that's all. That was the degree to which he performed at 2. So if he gets striking performers at this level, to this quality so early on in his career, it is a good indicator. It's not the only indicator, but it's a positive sign, isn't it? So it's interesting to hear you shape him up as maybe a moral victor. And I know the team at Ballylynch have been knocked down with people at his 20 grand price. A lot of people want to breed to him, and that's probably quite understandable given the start he has had. But if we move forward, guys, and we think about the class of this year, 2018 takes center stage. There's a picture of Ribchester, of course, winning at Royal Ascot. When you did your research and you were thinking through this crop, were there anything that stood out to you, Joe, in terms of reflections of the talent we have available with first runners in 2021?
Yeah, it's definitely a very exciting bunch when you have a look through it. Ribchester is obviously one of the standout ones. He's obviously by Offradar, who in his first season, again, somewhat shocked everyone. He had 38 odd winners in his first season. He was incredible how he done it. It's actually a very fast line, that Symphonic line. He's a very good 2-year-old himself, Ribchester. Obviously, he broke his maiden in the Mill Reef, which is a very hard thing to do after finishing twice before that. People probably do forget because he achieved so much later on, over a mile. But he stood out. Another one, obviously, Churchill. When you go through his record, he's one of the best records amongst these. He's a very precocious family as well. He's obviously out of Meow. She was placed in the Queen Mary. She's out of Airwave, Cheevy Park winner. Champion 2-year-old himself, an incredible racehorse. So there's no doubt, you know, this class is probably, it's a very exciting class, and there's some massive prospects this year coming through.
And we might stay with you, Joe, for this question, but, you know, when you're thinking about making a stallion, you know, because it's all very well and good getting lots of numbers in 20, you know, back in 2018, big razzmatazz, but actually, you know, establishing them on the ladder of stallions going forward. What are you thinking about when you think about a claim and you're thinking about Time Test, the two horses with first runners for the English National Stud? What are you trying to achieve, and what are you looking for to see them have success on the racecourse?
They're both very different stallions. You know, you have different aspirations for them both. You know, Acclaim was obviously the most popular first season sire here in the UK that year. Covered 160. Covered a very good book. You know, a lot of commercial breeders, a lot of sharp mares. You know, a lot of speed, precocious. You know, even though he won his maiden at 2 at the back end, a little bit. I think it was December he won his maiden. You know, he had a little bit of an issue that held him up until then. But when you look at him physically and everything, you do think they are going to be sharp. There is precociousness amongst them. He covered a very good book in his first crop. So you would hope he'd get rolling early. Whereas Time Test, you know, you probably won't see the best of him until after June, July time. You know, he did cover an incredible book in his first year. Covered a dam of 4 classic winners or placed horses. You know, How the Soul is incredible, really. He covered 110 in his first year. But his stock is so good looking, and that's reflected in his numbers since. His biggest book was actually last year, in his 3rd season. And even though he's about to have his first runners this year, I would think he's going to cover a bigger book this year than he did last year again. So,
yeah, and absolutely, and that makes a lot of sense. And Mark, would that be something similar that the Coolmore team would approach their new stallions and trying to establish them for the future?
Absolutely. There's a lot of internal support as well as the external. So pretty much echoing a lot of what Joe's sentiments are there, that it's very hard to put a limit down to one factor of why they make it or not, but it's a bunch of factors that are all pulling in the same direction. So it's a mixture of what Joe tipped on, but pedigree and race record, and then it's the likability factor, the acceptableness of the sales ring. Not always that the sales ring gets it right, and it comes back to that moral victory we're on about as well. But it's a lot of different things, from the planning of matings to the working with your clients, the support of your clients, because that's probably one of the biggest things to any stallion is the breeders they go to, and then the trainers they go to as well. Yeah, we've 3 different stallions this year as well, so 3 very different types. One's more exciting than the next. So I think, when you're talking about this year's bunch of 3 or 2-year-olds, I noticed a massive difference to last year. Last year was very speed orientated. You got Metmas, Shala, you had Bellardo, you had Pride of Dubai. There was loads of speed element into it. I think this year it's a different type. There's a lot of horses you'll say he'll be better at 3, and I think it's going to be a very interesting bunch of horses to watch.
No, absolutely. And you know, Paddy, when I think about you know, first season sires, a sire that always stays with me is Invincible Spirit, because, you know, he was a, you know, hard knocking commercial, you know, cheaper end stallion in around the €10,000 mark, and his runners just ran away with themselves. They were unbelievable from the get-go, and they really showed a precocity that perhaps Invincible Spirit didn't have himself to the same degree. He won his Group 1, I think, when he was a 5-year-old. Like, it's amazing the legacy a fast start like Invincible Spirit had can leave on a stud farm.
Yeah, I mean, we've stud some very good stallions, but Invincible Spirit is like no other we've had, and he's continuing to show that year in, year out. I mean, I was going through kind of the list of leading sires over the last few years, and you kind of look who's 2nd and 3rd, and although an Invincible Spirit son hasn't won it in the last 5 years, it's not for a horse who's being very close to do it. And the likes of Charm Spirit was 2nd, Mason did extremely well. Kingman may not have hit out the lights with the amount of winners in his first season, but it did extremely well. Shalar, who may not have hit it out the lights up here, sold a horse for 1.15 million there in Australia and won the 2-year-old Magic Millions race. So, I mean, Invincible Spirit sons now seem to be so hot. So it's exciting to have 2 horses by him again going to war this year. Starting on Profitable, I suppose, which is really exciting to see him. He's out of an Indian Ridge mare, which I suppose is another nice thing for the Irish national stud to see that. And I know he's not ours, but he looks like a horse that has a really similar profile to Invincible Spirit, that kind of was a good 2-year-old without being top class by any means. I think he was rated 98 or something like that. So really similar to Invincible Spirit in lots of ways, but then went on to win his Group 1 at a later stage. So, and he's with the numbers is going to have a great chance. And we're really excited to have our own one, National Defence, which is kind of an interesting one in the sense that Profitable will be in the top 5-1. Less than that, he'll be in the top 2 or 3 in the betting. For a horse rated sub 100 as a 2-year-old, and people would be expecting him to go and hit out the lights. And Invincible Spirit was very much the same, a horse that people probably weren't expecting to take all before him and have done it. So that's changed, and that's where the wheelhouse has changed. And you see a son of Invincible Spirit been really short in the betting. And then we have our own Invincible Spirit son in National Defence, which is really exciting for us. So he's the first son of Invincible Spirit that we stood. So really special in that sense. He probably doesn't have the numbers on his side purely because he was unfortunate to get a kick in his first season. So it goes another long way to saying, it's only part of the battle is getting the stallion into a farm. There's a long way to go before you get those runners on the track. But for a horse to win the Prix Jean-Luc Lagardère by 4.5 lengths, and a race that's been won by some of the best horses like Siuni and Wootton Bassett, it means that we're really excited to see his first 2-year-olds go to war this year, and we're hoping that he'll probably again do it on the quality marks and get those black type winners under his belt.
Yeah, brilliant. I suppose a little bit.
I think there's been a lot of brownie points been sent here.
A little bit of close to you. It was borderline. But in the National Defence, I'll give him one little warning, Paddy. But you got the 5-length win of the Prix Jean-Luc Lagardère in there very elegantly.
The stallion making racing as well. The line in towards the end there, very good, Paddy.
You missed your opportunity. It's not my fault.
Yeah. But if we have a look, and we've talked about, a lot of these horses already, but this is the actual meat of it. This is the contenders as deemed with thanks to Paddy Power and Tom Nugent who put together this list. And these are the horses that are in the top of their betting to be champion first season sire. Now, I think it's important to point out right from the get-go, there's really talented stallions that aren't on this list. I immediately jumped to mind Al Manzour, son of Wootton Bassett, a really, really exciting first season stallion. He'll probably be up there with the shortest price to sire the first classic winner. But of course, the odds that Paddy Power are giving are reflective of who will have the most UK and Ireland winners. And for Al Manzour to do that, given his book is limited to 140 mares, and he was French based, it would be virtually impossible. But this is the list that Paddy Power put together, the odds. We see joint favourites at the top, Caravaggio and Profitable. Cotai Glory close behind, representing the Memas team at Tally Ho. El Kabir, again, another short price for the team at Yeomanstown. Joe, you're seeing that list in front of us. What jumps out for you of value? And just before we start, the guys are going to each pick out a horse on this list. They're going to have a €25 charity bet with Paddy Power on their selection at these prices. So, Joe, kind of when you were thinking about your bet, where were you thinking might be the value for not only breeders that are going to breed their mare this year, but punters that are going to get involved with the Paddy Power odds?
Caravaggio at the top of the market, he probably is one of the most obvious choices, isn't he? With the numbers he has, the quality he has and so on, and his record. But for a bit of value for the charity bet, go down. Obviously, Acclaim 14-1. Had a little bet on that anyway, and that would go towards charity as well. He's a big, strong book to come, as we said. Looking good. Away from National Stud Stallions, I'd have to go with Churchill. I think he covered over 40 stakes winners in his first book. He's a serious amount of numbers there. Incredible racehorse. I think at 8-1, he represents great value. Okay,
so Churchill is the shout from Joe. Mark, you were there at the coalface in Coolmore. Would you echo that with Churchill?
Look, as Joe said, Caravaggio is very obvious. Being by Scatta, the same sire as No Nay Never, who actually did win this by number. He was one of the horses to be a winner of this by numbers and be a moral victor as well. So he's a very obvious horse, but at 5-2, I'd probably be staying away from that. Churchill, I think, again, also a Group 1 winning 2-year-old as well. I think at 8-1, he probably is the bet. He's a lot more runners. And if I was true to my form, you'd probably be looking at something like Galileo Gold and what I said earlier on, or Cotai Glory. But I think for my job, I'm going to stick with Churchill, and I'll have as my pick.
But unfortunately, you might not be able to have the bet because we might mute you as you
That's
are
marketing, yeah.
proceeding to forgive us the instructions.
I forgot it.
But Paddy, what do you think? Where did you think jumped out?
Yeah, when it jumped out, I think when he won the Coventry, I fell in love with Caravaggio. I thought he was a proper horse, and all the numbers point towards him, and it's no surprise to see him at the top of the market. But for a little bit of value, what I think is interesting is probably Ribchester. Is a horse who was a big horse, but he's got a sire line on his side. I mean, Wootton Bassett, like Joe said, hit it out the lights with his first crop, so a son of Ifraj. So on that sense, he was a Mill Reef winner. He's got enough runners to work for him. I think he's at 9-1 is an interesting play. So I'll snide with him at the prices they are now. But I think the way the market's gone, there seems to be a lot of money on Caravaggio of late, and that doesn't seem to surprise me too much either.
There's been a steward's inquiry earlier that the boys in Tipperary might have backed it into favourite because Profitable was the early on favourite, but Caravaggio has vaulted to the top of the market just in time for this webinar. So we're a little bit suspicious, but we won't point any fingers. Guys, Sean Murphy had a very good question, and he wanted to talk about book quality, because we're looking at numbers and we're looking at, and they're all pretty similar. They're all over 100. But how important is the quality of mares you get in the door? Joe, you touched upon it with Time Test a little bit, and to a degree Acclaim as well. When you're sitting down with Tim and the team at the English National Stud, how important is it the mares you get in the door?
Huge. The mares is one of the most important things. Obviously, numbers is one thing, as we touched, but to have, as we said, that moral victory and actually cement yourself as a stallion, you need to have the quality performers and the stakes horses. It is one of the most important parts. As you mentioned, Churchill, I think he's covered over 42 stakes winners. That's a huge number of stakes winners to have in your first book. It's incredible. Time Test again with a massive quality, Claim with a huge quality book. It's definitely one of the most important aspects of it. And you could have a whole lot of winners, but if you don't branch into going to the tier of having stakes horses and stakes winners, you're probably not going to cement yourself as a future prospect and cement in the breeders' minds. And the quality mares, again, as we say, come from the quality breeders. And that's the most important part of it all. That's how you make your stallions, is having, the quality breeders with those good mares to come through your doors and help you make your stallion.
And, a very good point from Chris Naptine at the Little Park Farm. He's saying, postponed, guys. He's a really talented horse. Ulysses, these other more staying types that perhaps aren't on this list, and the reason being, of course, that they are less likely to have the precocious types to get the sufficient amount of winners. But it doesn't take away the quality that they would have and the potential. Like New Bay wouldn't have been on this list last year because it wasn't likely a horse that was only second. But again, we talked about the moral victor and the horse that people are talking about at the end of the season. Are there horses like that jumped out at you, Paddy, for 2021 that could be little sleepers that might not be on this list?
I think there's some really exciting horses this year, and I think Mark's alluded to it that maybe last year was a very much a speed and orientated crop, whereas this year there's some really nice horses that are speed orientated. But I think the really interesting ones are going to be that the horses that are going to be produce milers and beyond, because I think there's going to be some really quality bred animals from the likes of Ulysses with their connections. Time Test is really exciting. Postponed, again, Decorated Knight, some really well bred horses there by sire lines especially the Derbawi sire lines that are really emerging as a really strong contender for a horse to kick on with and to have sire sons by. So with really strong pedigrees. So, and with the support from the farms that they've come from with Darley, Cheveley Park, the English National Stud there, and Coolmore, and with the likes of Blue Diamond Support and Decorated Knight, there's some really nice horses that will all find their way into the top trainers. And I think with those horses, it's going to come down to their 5 or 6 best horses. And if they're able to be classic contenders going into the winter or something like that, those horses will find themselves really high on people's lists for buying or for breeding to next year. So some really exciting horses to go forward with.
Yeah, but I'm frequently met with breeders at the sales, and they've their hopes and dreams vested in this horse, and the market is telling them no, and they're frustrated because, you know, they maybe have, the sire has had 25 or 30 winners, or it's had 4 state horses, and in their mind, they're deeming that acceptable, and they're deeming that, you know, what the market desires. Like, Joe, when you think about the market and people's fashion of horses, what are your kind of reflections on how people make those assessments?
Yeah, fashion is obviously a huge thing. Mark alluded earlier on, you know, not what happens in the sales ring doesn't always follow through. People go, stallions go cold very quickly before their runners, and the opposite, people latch onto them. You know, there is obviously, if you're breeding commercially, there's obviously huge value in it. People who are breeding the race, obviously, they can go with their heart's content. It is a difficult situation if you firmly believe in a horse. He's after having his 20, 25 winners, so on. You believe he's done a very good job, but the sales ring is telling you different. It does leave breeders in a hard position, you know, that is recognised. But then that boils down to, again, is quality. You know, when a stallion has those quality books backing in years 2 and years 3, they generally manage to get out of that and come back around, you know, do the full circle, come back around. It's a favour. So really, that does a lot of that. It's well and good having these numbers in front of us now for this, but that when you're looking at sales ring and so on, I find years 2 and 3 is obviously so important as well, and having those numbers and quality again to cement the stallions.
And Mark, you know, what's remarkable at these lists, and we look at, you know, the lowest there is Cot Eye Glory at 6,000, and people might think, you know, €6,000 stallion, you know, how can they possibly compete with, you know, a European champion 2-year-old in Churchill, or a Caravaggio, you know, an unbeaten 2-year-old won the Coventry, Phoenix, Marble Hill, or, you know, all Ribchester, you know, an unbelievable horse for Richard Fahey. And you're looking at a $6,000 horse or an $8,000 horse, El Kabir, you know, very well recepted at the sales, going to a lot of good trainers. It's amazing, isn't it? Because like Wootton Bassett, who is one of your headline horses for 2021, you know, and acquired during 2020, he started as a $6,000 stallion. You know, Kodiak started as a $5,000 stallion. The best stallion on this list, Mark, it might not be on this list.
No, and I didn't want to bring it up earlier on because I used up brownie points, but like we talked about Wootton Bassett, he did rip up the manual. Like he started with 23 foals in his first crop. So he did, like, there was just nothing that should have worked for him, but he just made it happen. So there is an element that if they're a good bull, they'll be a good bull, and they'll get through the elements that are against them. But runners just give you that chance, that elevated platform, especially for in the context of what we're talking about, being the champion sire by winners. But to be the long-term winner, I think that a lot of this goes out the window, and it's when you beat expectations, that's when you're the winner, to be a long-term stallion. There's a lot of stallions you see go to the first crop of sales, the yearlings, the foals, they're hard shifted, and 12 months later you can't get a nomination to them because everyone wants to use them. So it's a great game, and it's a great game because it's so much chance to it that any one of them could be the next big sleeper. Like Paddy touched on there, Decorated Knight, fantastic pedigree, race record, you know, everything's correct there. And I'm taking off my hat here, but Highland Reel is very much in the same mold as that, and Joe's got Time Test. They're the kind of horses that in 12 months time we could be all saying, sure, wasn't he obvious? And I think that's the beauty of all this, that there's an angle for each one of them. Code High Glory was a very fast horse. Would you be surprised he's a very good two-year-old sire? No, not at all. It could be the next Memas. Who knows? It's absolutely brilliant. That's why I think we're all here tonight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, you know, you think back to the past few seasons, you know, Caravaggio had a really good statistical start. He came back, stands with Michal Orlandi now. You think of Coolsey, did very well last year. Again, he's going to be very popular in 2021. Gokin in France, you know, they could be, bizarre is the wrong word, but they can be really off-radar stallions that actually are the ones that people really desire at the end of it. So I think it's a big message I would put out there for people that are looking at this list and thinking, oh God, my mare is not covered by one of these stallions. To be honest, this is just a construct of Paddy Power. It's not a construct of the sales ring. And actually, there can be real profit to be made. Or, you know, of course, disasters to come from breeding off this list or on this list. You never know, you know. But I think what's important, and a lot of people are thinking about it, you know, we're in January. The mares are about to be covered here in February. We're all excited for that. But are there stallions on this list you think people should consider breeding to that might be off the radar, either on or off this list, that you think could be a bit of value? You know, because that's the important part of it. It's all very well and good saying, you know, oh, sure, look, let's breed everything to these expensive stallions. But that's not tangible for a lot of people. What do you think, Paddy, could be a bit of value for people?
Well, I suppose, I mean, Tally-Ho and Yeomanstown have both shown, that they've got a great record of being leading first season sire. On that basis, if you're trying to pump for the horse that's going to have the most, I mean, they're a great operation to go with. Whatever horse you use on here, there's going to be a risk reward element of it, and the nature of it is maybe not even just this list, the other 10, 15 horses. Four or five of them will, by the end of the year, be the ones that we all are keen to breed to the following season. And unfortunately, there'll be a number of them that are disappointing at every level. So I think that if you're doing it, you've really got to trust your conviction, really believe in the horse, and stand by your decision. Because I'd rather get it wrong on a horse that I really believed in, than take a punt on something that I didn't have my convictions on. But I think if you're looking on that basis, I think the likes of Cote Glory has it at 6,000, for a farm that has produced a leading first season sire on sort of 3 of the last 5 occasions, or been up there. For a horse like that, who was a very speedy horse that continued as a top class sprinter throughout a few more years, he's going to be a really interesting one for breeders, and at a good value level for them to take the risk on.
And Joe, the same question to you, but perhaps maybe UK based. Where would you think the value might be?
You probably have to take a slap of brownie points here, but there's great deals available on Time Test and Acclaim as we head into the first runners. And all on a hat off, I think the two of them do represent, as we said, Time Test has a lot of quality mares as Acclaim. You're hoping they're going to hit the stakes bars, as Paddy said. Acclaim is the numbers also. Away from them, a horse who isn't on that list, who might actually have some sharp ones and a little bit of quality, is Ardad, who is probably quite good value this year, €4,000. He won his maiden. I think he won the Windsor Castle 6 days later or something insane.
Castle, yeah, and very
he won the Flying Childers. He was tough. He's by Kodiak. Kodiak had, coasted a very good year last year. I think he could be one a little bit of a value price also. Away from our two guys, if you're looking for that. But yeah, there's not Acclaim is the only UK representative on that list, so it's good to give another one a mention. But yeah, there's a lot of variables involved in it really. You're looking for value this year. Breeders who use stallions this year, when they're about to have their first runners, really do believe them and they see a long-term goal and so on. So a hat goes off to them, and they do deserve a little bit of value when they're taking that risk.
Well, we've a lot of breeders joining us this evening, and I think it would be very valuable to get their opinion. So we're going to do a quick poll, and we're going to ask 2 questions. 1, what do you think will be the leading first season sire? And 2, what do you think will be the leading sire to sire a first classic winner? Now, unfortunately, we only had 10 choices for both lists, so please don't blame me if your choice is not on either list. But I'm just going to issue this poll. I'm going to allow the panelists to vote. I won't see where they voted, so they can perhaps cast a somewhat biased vote. But here we go, launching it now. It'd be great to see what people think in terms of these 2 questions. Mark Byrne was very quick in with his answer there. The first vote I saw was Acclaim, so I don't know if Mark voted for Acclaim. So have a look, have a go there. So we've 143 people online. We've already got half of them, just over half now. Votes in. We've only got a few more seconds to go. Get your votes in. Okay, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to share the results, and our winner is Churchill. Churchill to be champion first season.
Tie, a draw.
Oh no! How many bots have you employed for this poll? A tie between Churchill and Caravaggio. We're going to have to check the servers for Tipperary bots, because that was just remarkable. The UAE bots performed quite well, profitable, and Ribchester in second and third, slightly edging it out with 19 votes with Ribchester. So there you have it. So a joint winner for who will be champion first season sire. Our favourite Caravaggio and Churchill. For a lot of people, the value play at 8-1. And the first sire, who do you think will be the first sire classic winner? We have Churchill again topping that poll, closely followed by Al Manzoor. So there you have it. So that's the views of everyone joining us this evening. Guys, reflecting on that poll, and people seem to be voting with their feet towards Mark Byrne's direction. But Joe, when you look at that list and you think about where market sentiment might be in 2021, it could be very, very different, couldn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It could be very different. As we've echoed a few times, a lot of it comes down to who the moral winners are in relation to how to perform in comparison to how many runners, stakes winners, percentage and so on. So it could be very different in 2021. Newbay was a great example. As we said, he did run once, didn't win as a 2-year-old. And look at him now, you can't get into him. Rewind Night of Thunder. He won his maiden on very soft ground, didn't he? He was a good 2-year-old, but he wasn't a star 2-year-old either. So the market sentiment could be very different in a few years' time, next year.
And Paddy, a very good question that's come in on our Q&A function, and that's, when the Irish National Stud team are sitting down and you're trying to pick a horse to win this race, and you're trying to think, what might be a potential champion first season sire, what way are you thinking about that? How do you assess a stallion prospect for the market? What's the kind of approach with the team at INS?
Yeah, I suppose our business model is, the real champions are probably unattainable, at a price level. I think it's a game of compromise, really. What we're trying to do, I suppose, is look at the P's, really. So performance, pedigree, price, and physical, and we're trying to tick as many of those boxes as we possibly can, with the view that we'll probably have to compromise somewhere along the line. For us, physical is a huge part of it. You want breeders to come to your door, and if they're, at this level, those horses are good race horses. But what will convince a breeder to go with your horse, maybe to invest and buy shares in your horse, is the physical, is the last thing that they see, and is the last impression that you leave on them. So we think we hang a lot on physical. I think so. That means any horse that we like the profile of has to pass a physical test for us, has to be a good moving animal, and with the view that they could produce the sales horses, which are very important to Irish breeders. But other than that, you're just hoping to get as good a horse with the quality, and that doesn't necessarily mean the 5 furlong, 6 furlong sprinter that can be really commercial. It's whatever we think is value and good for the market. There's this kind of intangible sexiness that we've kind of half alluded to about horses that is really hard to gauge the market. That we're going to put a horse out there, and the first day that we show him, we'll have a sentiment of what the people's vibe on the horse is, but we're putting our neck out with a horse, and hoping breeders come with you. So you're just trusting that you've ticked enough of those boxes, that will eventually bring those 150 mares in the gate from the first season, and luckily we've done that in the last few years.
Yeah, it's my girlfriend finds that utterly bizarre when I refer to a horse as sexy. But it really is a thing, it's something that we all talk about. It's like there's something attractive for people about this horse. And Mark, when you're kind of trying to shape people's minds and Coolmore Stallions, and you're trying to convince them to be part of it, it can be a real just something, a je ne sais quoi about a horse, isn't it? And that can really just drive them forward.
The sizzle. It's all about the sizzle. Like it's and when you're going back to it though, that's where the value is avoiding those type of horses with the sizzle. So like we talk about the back end, you're on about breeding mares this year coming. So by the time you're selling the foal, those first crop horses will have run as 3-year-olds. So that's where the value is now, because a lot of people would probably try to be more shaped towards the speed element of things, where the value is probably in the horse that's going to be the 3-year-old, the back end 2-year-old, and that's where we all have a horse in that category of that caliber. So that's probably where the value is. But no, when it adds up, so if the horse with the sizzle and the pedigree and the race record and all that, and when they hit, they're the ones then that go to that next level that you can't get into. They go to the high end stud fee, and then they get the better mares, the better breeders, and it's just a momentum that you can't stop and slow down.
Yeah, there's some horses that just go far above expectations, isn't there? And it's remarkable. But Joe, when you talk about that, you know, sorry, you can't mute me, lads. I'm sorry. It's desperate, isn't it? But Joe, like, you know, I'm interested. You know, I hear what Mark's saying, and you know, about sitting down with a stud farm and the importance of that, and talking about your mares, and you know, considering that, you know, you can put the plan together, you know, maybe do a deal. Like, that's an important part of the process for mare owners, isn't it? It's not just about picking a stallion; it's about building a relationship with the stud farm.
Absolutely, you know, and that links into what Paddy said too. When you're looking at new stallions and so on, you know the type of horse your clientele wants, what the market wants, where you fall into, and building that rapport and that relationship with your clients is one of the most important parts of it. And they'll continue to support you in the years 2 and 3. That's why the likes of breeding rights and so on, you know, they're great tools. They're great opportunities for breeders, and they're great for the stud farm that support the stallions in the quieter years to keep them going. And that's true relationships, is building relationships with those breeders.
I'm conscious, Joe, like, you know, some people on this call, they might not know what a breeding right is or what a share in stallion is. Would you mind just explaining that briefly for them?
I think you should actually explain in relation to the new first season sires returning this year. I think this is your time to shine now, you know.
But I would, Joe, but unfortunately they're sold out, and they sold out in 2 days for Far Above. So I'd love to be explaining that, but I just couldn't do it because they're just not available. It'd be a waste of time. But Paddy, you know, I think of Phoenix of Spain, you know, he's a horse that you bought prior, you know, at the end of his 2-year-old career, and he ends up a stallion for the Irish National Stud. You might explain about that stallion purchase process, because I think that's something that really just intrigues people and really kind of excites them in a way.
Yeah, I mean, going back to my earlier point that, you know, it's a game of compromises. With Phoenix of Spain, he was a horse that, you know, if it had finished a nose ahead of Magna Grecia, if the result had been the other way around, we would never have got him, you know. So we had to compromise slightly that he was a 2-year-old that was under the radar a little bit, and that was why we managed to purchase him, you know. But I suppose for us, you know, that initially started with a horse that we found, a horse that we really liked the profile of. You know, he ticked a lot of the boxes. He was by Lope de Vega, who we thought was who was going to be the next big thing. He had a really strong pedigree. He is a racehorse. You know, at the stage we first were interested, he was a Group 3 winner. But at the end of at the time of we purchasing him, he was a Group 3 winner who got the closest to Too Darn Hot, who was second in a Race and Post trophy. So if he never did it again, you know, we had that little bit. We had that sort of risk saver in the sense that we always felt he could stand at stud, but we had a horse that we felt could run on for us. So we obviously got in touch, and each deal is differently. Luckily, you know, we ran into 2 fantastic owners in Anne Plummer and Tony Welshler, and with agents, with Matt and Jeffrey of Howson and Holdsworth Bloodstock, we managed to strike a deal in which we managed to purchase the horse, but retain him in the colours of the owners, which was fantastic. And as you know, we did something slightly different in the sense that we sold sort of a little bit of him going into his 3-year-old career. But from the Irish National Stud business model, we feel the support of the stallion is so important, and getting those numbers in. And as you've seen, you know, those horses all at the top of these lists have got the numbers behind them, and that was our vision with Phoenix of Spain. We wanted to get the best quality people behind him to get those numbers. So we initially purchased the horse and then syndicate him and to whatever level we feel, but we obviously want to keep a part of him and grow this group of people behind him. So you divide the horse up and you show him to breeders that you think will like-minded and give the horse the best chance going forward, not only with breeding quality mares, but also supporting them in the sales ring and going forward to give him the platform to go and succeed.
And Mark, you know, when I think about the Coolmore success, and you know, it is remarkable, and it is important to dwell on, you know, the just breadth and the scale of your operation. But one thing that always strikes me about Coolmore is just how you identify sire lines and you back that sire line. You know, maybe just explain that to the people on the call and what that entails and what that means in terms of, you know, standings, you know, sons of your stallions.
Well, firstly, it's a lot of hard work at identifying these horses, and it's not just you know, in a room or an office there studying stuff. It's a lot about like the main kind of stockmen going out looking at the horses, seeing them physically, seeing the types they're constantly throwing, and then it's working with what type of mare suits them, sending those type of mares. Then you get the progeny. You know, it's about the rearing of them, the breaking of them. They go to Ballydoyle, the training of them, and then they come back and they're stallions. And it's a big long circle that it goes full tilt. So you can see from where this place all started from. It was basically built off bloodlines from America. Northern Dancer was the main driver of it all here. When they landed on him, they went over to America every year. They bought the best of the yearlings, or they tried to buy the best of the yearlings, and obviously then things started to get more and more hotter as the Muhammad family got more and more involved in it, and with that it kept getting more competitive. So they ended up being able to kind of stand the best of them. They had the likes of from that came through, and Sadler's Wells is obviously the progeny of a mare that they bought out there. They sent up, and with that then, so you've got Galileo, you've got Sons of Galileo, and more recent times Scat Daddy's been responsible for a lot of the upgrade of the mares here. So it all comes from being universal as well. Like you look across the stallion yard, and I'm not trying to just give it a plug here, Jack, but you look across the stallion yard, there's mares there, or there's stallions there out of Australian mares, Australian pedigree mares. There's Saxon Warrior, who's a Japanese bred, was conceived in Japan. So it's a whole universal thing, and we're all working together. And you've got like US Navy Flag, who's by an American stallion. So it's Ireland, it's Europe, it's America, it's Japan, and it's Australia. And it's just working to find the best the whole time. And it's just to get back to what we were talking about. It's just basically a lot of hard work is what we keep, and what we keep driving into.
Okay, brilliant. Guys, I'm conscious we've a few questions there in the Q&A function. I don't know if you want to click through any of them you'd like to take a look at, and have a go at answering. You know, we've had some great contributions from lots of people online. Anything that jumps out, guys?
I'm only just after finding that function now.
You wouldn't be long finding a good sire line, but you definitely you'd struggle to find a Q&A function on Zoom, Mark. Anything there that you'd like to touch upon?
Sorry, Mark, you want.
Sorry, no, Judge, it might be even the same question. Just someone says, as the next generation of stallion man, if you were populating the stallion yard, would you go for sires who get precocious 2-year-olds, or stallions who may not get a lot of 2-year-olds but get you genuine Group 1 old horses? I think that's a brilliant question. And it's actually a brilliant debate that a lot of people are having with themselves at the moment. Speed is brilliant, but class is what the whole thing comes down to. If you don't have class, you're at nothing, and you're kind of, I'm not on about I'm trying to change the breed or lift the breed, but I think it's something that we all think about, is that like you'd love to breed the listed, the Group 3, the Group 2, and possibly even the Group 1 winner. So that's if you're not aiming for the top, I think there's no real point. And then the other thing as well is, are they fast horses, or they just win over shorter distance? Like a horse who wins over 10 furlongs and gets blocked and quickens 2 or 3 times in a race, to me, he's probably a faster racehorse. If Frankel turned up in the July Cup, he would have went off favourite. So I think there is a balance. You need to get punters in through the door and fast sells, and in your own word there, Jack, it's sexy. But I think in the long term, if you start standing horses that produce Group 1 winners, it will all take care of itself. And it's the same when you're covering your mares. You can breed for the ring, and you need to survive in the short term, but it's all about the long term.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, I feel free to mute me, but I suppose something we thought about with Far Above was a little bit like that, Mark. It was the fact that this is a horse undefeated over 5 and 6 furlongs that won a race that was won by a Group 1 winner the last 10 years. He's the first horse since then not to do it. And it was only because of an unfortunate injury he was. But that, you know, if he'd won a Group 1, we wouldn't be able to afford him. Yeah. And he would have been standing for a price like Hello Yumzain, who stands for 25,000. But you have that potential brilliance that he can translate to mares of that class, and that hopefully, he'll be a horse that we're talking about in this list in, a couple of years' time. But I suppose that's it. You need something taken away so you can be part of that horse's story, because you can't always have the European champion 2-year-old Churchill, or Ribchester, the brilliant miler. We can't all afford that. We need to think tactically and think, there's a real opportunity with some of these horses, and we talked about it already. Al Manzour, he's the son of Wootton Bassett. Wootton Bassett was started at $6,000, but what a legacy he might leave in the turf. So you just never know where it's going to be come the end of the year, and that's what's so exciting about this time of year. We have an Al Manzour filly in training, and she could be the start of a real exciting process for that stallion. So you don't know. Joe, you were about to jump in to answer one of the questions. Was it the same question, or did you have another one in mind?
Yeah, no, it was the same question, and it was really echoing Mark's thoughts on it. Really, speed is great, commercial value obviously excellent, but class is permanent. And that's why we're all here. We're all here to. Everyone breeds horses for a dream, isn't it? It's a dream to try to produce the best you can possibly do, and class is permanent. So speed is amazing, but personally, a genuine Group 1 older, gets older horses and so on. It's the way to go, isn't it? That's why we're all here, and that's what we all dream of.
No, it's remarkable, and just when you land it right, there's no better feeling, to have your mare. Let's say Profitable has 40 winners, it's unbelievable. They're all rocket ships, to have your mare in foal to a stallion like that at a moment like that is really, really exciting. But we don't know. We don't know who it could be. It could be Decorated Knight. It could be National Defence. It could be Time Test. There's so Time Test, Son of Debawi, just like New Bay. There's so many different factors at play, and you just don't know where the next champion's going to come from. But Paddy, did anything jump out from you in the Q&A function? I know there's lots more questions populating as we speak.
Yeah, I think the interesting question is to the narrowing of the thoroughbred gene pool in Ireland and Britain, with breeders trying to find outcrosses. I mean, it's something, we'd actively love to stand an outcross, but I think what it comes to, we want to actively stand an outcross that we think can cover 150 mares. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think that I think between Joe and Mark, we'd all love to stand a horse that, that we could actively breed a lot of the population to without inbreeding to. But it's finding that horse that is perfect. Not only is in outcross that people really want to get behind. And I think it's all well and good. I think stallion, I probably didn't touch on it a huge amount. When we're actually finding a stallion, I think sire line is all important to us, because what we know is that breeders will really hone in on horses, and if you're going out on a limb, it can be really tricky to get those mares in. Standing the first son of a horse can be tricky, and you never quite know what way people are going to perceive it. And from a point of view, and it probably touches on another question asked, these stallions are, for us, we don't breed our stallions. We have to purchase them, and they cost an awful lot of money, naturally enough, because of how good they are and how competitive it is between the different farms that you're trying to find them. So to find a stallion that you think makes sense, and then you can stand it at value with the view that, it's not going to be a huge, leave a huge hole in your resources down the line. You want a horse that you feel that you can support, you can get the money back from, and that will go on and continue the breed and hopefully make a lasting mark for you, which is really important. So it's really trying to find something that the breeders want, and that is an outcross is not the easiest thing in the world, but we'd love to do it if we could.
Yeah, no, and I suppose, Joe, when we talk about an outcross, because I'm trying to straddle, kind of do a balance here. Some people might know what an outcross is. Some people might be obsessed about, dosage factors. It's a real cross section of the people that join us. But you just might dwell upon an outcross and why that's important.
Yeah, look, as you said, it's something really opinions are of. Some people, some people like inbreeding to a certain extent. Some people like to go completely outcross. It really is a preference thing for breeders. Just some things are proven. Some inbreeding certain lines work. Inbreeding to Danzig, everyone knows that works. That's a line that works. Some lines people won't go near. And that's obviously a hugely important part. You have to believe in what you're doing. But, then when you take confirmation into it, that's obviously a very important part where you're looking to. So when you're looking for a certain outcross, and what confirmation is going to suit your mare, it is a tricky position, and you can understand why there is that dilemma. I can understand why people are questioning the narrow and the gene pools. When you look through the stallions this year on that list that we have, the influence that Galileo has on them is incredible. When you flick through them there straight away, you obviously Decorated Knight. There's a mass. Obviously, you have Highland Reel. You have Churchill, Galileo Gold. You have huge amounts with the Galileo influence already. So you can understand why that concern is coming with breeders. But as I said, people do have certain opinions on it, and that is, as you said, it's cross-partial, really.
Okay, well, brilliant. I suppose, guys, thank you very much for your contributions tonight. So we just to make sure we have your bets correct. So Joe, who's your pony going on?
Churchill.
Mark?
If Joe has Churchill covered, I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to go with, and don't laugh at this, but I'm going to go with Highland Reel. He's from the family of Star Spangled Banner. He's got runners. One is maiden by 12 lengths in July. Let's go with Highland Reel.
Good man, Mark. Good man. Fight and talk. And Paddy?
Ribchester.
Swing for Ribchester. Okay, well, a good cross section. That's it for this week. But we want you to tell us what you want to do next week. So please get in touch with my Twitter account at Jack Cantillon. If you enjoyed tonight, please share that you have. It'd be really helpful to get the word out. But we want to hear from you exactly what you'd like to hear from, because that's what it's driven by. It's driven by you and what you'd like to learn about the game. Thank you very much to Paddy, to Mark, to Joe. It's brilliant to hear all their contributions about being young stallion masters and how you go about this fascinating sport and how you build generations of racehorses and generations of talented stallions. But please do get in touch what you want to learn about, because we're here for you, and we want to make sure we widen and expose people to parts of the game perhaps that you never thought possible. So thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to the guys, and hopefully we'll see you at the same time next week.